of these D&D character options aren't just breaking your game, that crunch might be ruining it. Hey there, adventurers. Welcome back to Short Rest Studios. I'm Judd, and I believe it's good to have options, but too many can be bad for TTRPGs. I'm going to talk about the impact too many choices has on players, what happens when you take away the options, some tips to combat the bad, and 3 games I believe can fill the 5e void. One of them even preserves the crunch. Now, this video isn't about bad-mouthing D&D or telling you your fun is wrong. If you dig the crunch and the options and they work in your game, have fun with them. If you're feeling overwhelmed by rules or frustrated when players run their characters strictly off the character sheet, or worst of all, bored when things start to drag, there might be a really good reason. See, more options really aren't good for tabletop role-playing games because too many options are just overwhelming. Pretty much every human being on Earth believes it's better to have more choices, and so over the years of development and playtesting and evolution of Dungeons & Dragons, classes have been updated, subclasses have been added, feats, weapon masteries, species. It sounds great in theory, but it can make even getting started in D&D absolutely overwhelming. And this isn't just my opinion. There's a very real thing known as choice overload bias. The idea that more choice equals more freedom. The evidence actually says the opposite.
There's too many of them.
An abundance of options makes it harder to choose, and it often makes us less satisfied when we do finally choose. It can even lead to anxiety. If you're interested in this particular topic, I'll link to an article in the description. But let's get back to D&D. Imagine you're about to play D&D for the first time. You log on to D&D Beyond or open the player's handbook and you see 12 classes, 13 if you have Eberron, Forge, or the Artificer. That's not too bad, but there are 48 subclasses total in the 5.5 PHB. Then with origin feats, general feats, fighting styles, and epic boons, that's something like 75 more options. And of course, there are 10 species to choose from, but that may not matter as much to you since they don't provide the mechanical options they used to. If you're playing the 2014 edition, there are something like 120 subclasses. Now, before you say anything, I do recognize that all of these options are not available to you at all times. Certain feats, subclasses, things like that don't really figure into the game until later, sometimes much later. And of course, once you decide to be a barbarian, the cleric subclasses don't require your attention. But imagine for a moment that you're a complete beginner to the hobby with no frame of reference. Reading through all of this, figuring out how it's supposed to work, making up your mind feels like drinking from a fire hose.
Open wide!
But what happens when you get some experience under your belt and your character has leveled up, say to level 10? A typical 10th level character could have something like 25 active options. You get into combat, and which attack option do you take? Which spell do you cast? Okay, that was a dumb question. You cast Fireball, of course. Every D&D game slows down as characters level up because there are more options and more actions to take, and it takes more time to take them. It's just the nature of the game. But choice overload isn't even the worst problem, in my opinion. I'm not a psychologist, but I'm willing to bet that some people deal better with an abundance of options than others do, although everyone has their limit. And I don't even think the game slowing down because of players trying to use all those options is necessarily the problem. Most of the time, in my experience, players have their favorites that they go back to again and again, though things do still wind up slowing down. I actually think the bigger problem is this. Too many options on the character sheet make players less creative. I didn't say any options, but too many options. In my experience, the more detailed the character sheet gets, the less likely a player is to try something out of the box. Instead of teleporting up to the ceiling and grappling the roper that's trying to grapple him, your fighter will probably just shoot an arrow or strike at the roper's tendrils, because that's what the character sheet says he can do. And my theory, again, I'm not a psychologist, is that one of two things is behind this. Number one, choice overload bias. There's so much there on the sheet in front of them that they can't think of anything else, so they do what's on the sheet. Or number two, they just don't even consider that they can do anything that's not on their character sheet. Hey, if you dig content like this, please consider supporting the channel by joining the Adventurers Guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button under this video. Guild members get access to my unedited interviews with creators like Drawsteel's James Introcaso and Nimble's Evan Diaz, a library of dice and logos maps, my personal campaign notes, and the chance to vote on future video topics. Join the guild at patreon.com/shortreststudios or by hitting the join button right under this video. So what happens when you take away all the options? Some people believe that is the ultimate way to encourage creativity. You can do anything.
Your mind is already so prodigiously empty that there is nothing in it to clear away in the first place.
But the human brain doesn't work that way. When you present someone with a blank slate, it creates the exact same problem of choice overload. By removing all the options, you're essentially saying, instead of a list of 123 options, you now have a list of every possible option that ever has existed or ever will exist. Go ahead and pick one. In the context of role-playing games, that's one of the reasons even rules-light games still have character classes and the like. So let's talk about how you can combat the frustrations that crop up due to an abundance of options. When it comes to slowing down the game, I did a video a few years ago on tricks to speed up combat. You can check it out right here or find any number of other videos on the topic. There are loads of tips and tricks to make D&D combat faster. I really want to focus on how you can encourage your players to be more creative when they're relying too much on the codified options instead of trying to tell a cool story. And these 4 quick tips work for helping new players discover the rule of cool also. The first and possibly most important tip I have for you: ask tons of leading questions. If players don't interact with plot hooks or NPCs, if they're making the most basic of choices when it comes to actions, let them know they have the freedom to try something creative. You see the one-legged halfling bartender being assaulted by a customer. Do you want to help him or help the customer? Second, don't be afraid to help your players. I'm not saying you should fudge your dice rolls or make things easy on them. I'm saying if you have an idea of something cool they could try, or just something that seems obvious to you, I'd say it's okay to give them the idea. Just throw it out there. You want to give them ample opportunity to come up with something on their own first, but it's okay to help them out when they're struggling to be creative, especially when players are new. And my third tip is this: hand out inspiration like it's candy. Even if it's not typically part of whatever system you're running, whenever your players do something cool or role play well or just do something unexpected, give them inspiration like you're Oprah. You get inspiration, and you get inspiration, and you get inspiration. And my last tip, just say it outright. You're not limited to what's on your character sheet. What I like to tell my players is ask yourself what would be fun and do that. I promised you 3 games that can fill the 5e void but alleviate the problem of too many options, so here they are. If you love brutal, old-school dungeon crawls, check out Shadowdark. It's got a D20 core mechanic, the rules are incredibly well written and tightly organized. I have had some of the most fun I've ever had playing Shadowdark. True to its old-school vibe, Shadowdark encourages creativity by limiting your characters. You have the classic character classes and species with more official options available outside the core rules, but they're never overwhelming. It's built for dungeon crawls, only monsters can see in the dark, and torches only last an hour of real time. Second, if you're looking for a game that retains D&D 5e's superheroic epic fantasy, check out Nimble. This game might just have the world's fastest combat system. You only roll damage dice, a 1 misses, but everything else hits. When you roll the max on your damage die, that's a crit, and that means you get to roll again. And as long as you keep critting, you keep rolling. Nimble's rules are incredibly lightweight, but it manages to still provide a bunch of really cool character options without weighing you down. The third one might surprise you, but if you just can't live without the crunch, go for Drawsteel. This is definitely a crunchy game with a lot of options, but it avoids the bloat of D&D. The system is beautifully designed with its heroic resources and an incredibly intuitive gameplay loop that powers up your PCs as you fight. And combat is a little trickier to pick up than Nimble or Shadowdark, especially if you're used to 5e, but once you learn the system, it's blazing fast. Adventurers, that's my take on why fewer character options are better in TTRPGs. What's your favorite way to help your players embrace creativity at the game table? Drop it in the comments. I've looked at a ton of game systems that keep things moving. Check out this video on 10 blazing fast D&D alternatives that don't suck to learn, and I'll see you on the next short rest. Remember, you don't have to quest alone.